God, we come before you and we give you thanks because you are God. And sometimes we mess that up and sometimes we try to play your role. But Lord, right now we come before you as men and we confess that you are God and we are not. Yes. And so as we are here in this moment, Lord, lead our conversation, guide our thoughts, and open our mouths so that we can speak your words. Lord, help us to be honest and vulnerable, and not to show off, but so that your kingdom, Lord, your kingdom is furthered, and that your kingdom comes, and your will be done on earth, just like in heaven. That's our prayer right now. We pray all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, welcome to Let's Talk Fortitude. And if you know, you have seen this location many times. And Clay, you broke our hearts, man. Well, I wasn't going to throw everybody off. We went down to the farm like, well, let's pack it up and go, man. Everybody, it is my honor and pleasure to bring to you Josh Cook and Clay McConnell on the and Todd Langdon.
That's right.
My wonderful buddy, Todd Langdon, on the Let's Talk Fortitude podcast. And I didn't know a whole lot, Todd, about Josh's testimony until this weekend. We're coming off of the men's retreat, and that's all you're going to get, basically.
Well, I don't know, because I'm a little more open about what goes on at these things. I mean, it's the whole secrecy thing, it can turn a lot of people off.
It can.
So, sometimes you got to peel back the layers and open the curtain a little bit.
Right.
And really intrigue them with.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And that's something you have taught me, really.
Yeah, we talk so much about secrecy and trying to avoid secrecy, and then we go on this retreat and we're like, hey, don't tell anybody anything. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's our best.
Right.
I'm not sure that's really our best foot forward. But I can appreciate what anyone needs to know is if you want to experience God's love in the most powerful way possible, it's going on these retreats. Because when you do get to go on them, you hear men be vulnerable and you hear them be open. You even heard that just reflection in the prayer, just because we're just coming off the retreat.
That's right.
It's still
we're still in
Emotions are high.
Yeah. So the other thing is with some people have seen Clay if they're part of the live stream, like I was.
Yeah.
You've seen Clay teach Bible study prior to the live stream and service. So that's also a connection to have seen Clay before.
Sure.
Josh, not so much unless you're here in person. You come and visit and walk by the children's wing. And
I posted the live stream a couple of times.
I've seen Josh a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's rare that you're pulled.
Well, it just,
he's serving,
I'm busy.
He's serving upstairs, like they don't have to do a background check on me to get me onto the live stream, right?
That's true. You might not be eligible.
But to work where he works in the church, you got to do this monster background check.
Yeah.
So he works with all the kids, the 4th and 5th graders, and we want to make sure that
they're well taken care of.
That's true. That's
true. My goodness. That's hilarious. Well, guys, what Let's Talk Fortitude is, and as we talked a little bit before we got started, Todd and I, your people's testimonies are important, but we also feel like one of the most important things about that testimony are the men or the people. It could even be women. I mean, Mary, let's look at the women of the Bible. Yep. I mean, how many of those men, some of them had long hair or whatever, they didn't wash Christ's feet with their tears. It was women that did that. Mm-hmm. But what we want to do is talk about the people who have built into your life at some of your lowest moments. And maybe opportunities like we talked with, that I was sharing, with Paul Stevens and Ruck and Grant, about how Grant built into Ruck, and then there came a point where Ruck reciprocated that. Yeah. And one of the things I'm an old Promise Keepers guy, Bill McCartney Promise Keeper guy. I was on staff with him back in the day. It was volunteer staff. But one of the things that Bill said early on was, when he was speaking, is every Timothy needs a Paul. Mm-hmm. Every Paul needs a Barnabas. But it doesn't stop there. It doesn't just go up the ladder, because every Barnabas needs a Paul, and every Paul needs a Timothy. And that's what we're trying to do here. So through your life, just tell us a little bit, Clay, I'm sorry that you don't have a testimony. Your life's been so rosy all this time.
I'm not sure that's why I couldn't pass a background check.
No, that's right. That's right.
Technically, I do also work with the kids, and so I have passed the background check. So, man, I don't even know where to start. You say that. And, I heard somebody ask my dad about a year ago, there was this incredible revival going on in the United States. And it kind of broke out at Asbury College, and it just had this time of worship. And it was going on for days, and days turned into weeks. And so I looked at my dad and said, "You ready to go?" And he goes, "Yeah, let me talk to your mom." And so me and my mom and my dad and a preacher from right here who I know well, we all just get together and we journey up to Asbury College. And we're going there for that revival, just to be close to the Holy Spirit. Not that the Holy Spirit's not here in Louisiana.
That's right.
But man, when you hear about these things, you're like, I want to get as close as I can. And so we're in the line waiting, because there was a line just to get into the chapel there. Oh. And it was cold and it was snowing and I mean and yet we were like, no, we want to get to the core of it. So this preacher looks at my dad and he says, "Tell me about the first time, when you started loving God." And my dad looked at him and he said, "When did you start loving your mom?" And it floored me, because I'm 49 years old and I've been with my dad all my life.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's loved God as long as I've known him. But to hear, you were just talking about that baptism experience, even if it was in the 90s or if it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday. That's right.
90s or yesterday.
That's right.
It's fresh and it's incredible. But the perspective my dad said it, which was, man, I've loved God as long as I've loved my mom, and I've loved my mom as long as I can remember. And so for me, I've gone through highs and lows, but if you want to talk someone who stayed in the trenches with me, no matter what, I've never heard him cuss, never seen him drink alcohol, never. Wow. I mean, there's a lot of things that are just like what you would anticipate Jesus being like. Seen him get angry, very rare, and if it was always, that righteous anger. So I come from a really solid place with just my dad, and I have a lot of other men in my life that have walked the path with me as well. So.
Well, I guess everyone's looking at me now. I mean, y'all heard a lot about in my testimony this weekend. You heard a lot about my grandfather, and my grandfather still pours into me. For instance, 2 weeks ago, I was given the opportunity to present communion in front of the whole church.
That's right.
And what was more important, of course, I was nervous about it, and I was, well, how did I do afterwards? And, everybody comes up to you, "Hey, man, you did a great job today. I loved your message." It was more important to me. I took a little 5-minute video clip off of YouTube and sent it to my grandfather, and I called him the next day. It was his 82nd birthday, and I said, "Hey, did you get my video?" And he had some specific points, and those specific points, and then for him to go, "I sure was proud to see you up there preaching in front of everybody," and that meant more to me than anything anyone else could say. So that's the relationship he and I have always had.
How awesome.
He's built into me my whole life.
Yep.
And then, like I said, I've known God, I've known Jesus my whole life, and that's because of him. In addition to him, my grandmother, my mom, etc.
So this is my brother-in-law. I don't know if y'all know that or not.
Yeah, we know. I was getting ready to say, let's
full
make
disclosure.
Yeah,
not only is he my brother in Christ, we are married to sisters.
That's right. That's right.
And so I get to see Josh at all the family holidays.
Yep.
And I have, just since I have been in the family, because I've only been in the family about 8 years, I've watched Josh grow a tremendous amount. And my favorite part of his testimony that was a week ago whenever I got to hear it for the first time. And he's doing this. And in his testimony, one of the things he said is, he used to use a tape recorder.
That's right.
For us nowadays, it'd be a podcast.
Right.
He used to use a podcast to record himself to preach like his grandfather.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he was like, but I'm not a preacher. And it's funny to hear him talking about sending a tape of him preaching in the past 2 weeks.
Yep.
And not only that, but I told him, I said, look, you are, by teaching fourth graders, and his world fell apart when he was in fourth grade.
Yep.
Right? That's whenever his world split. And so now he's back serving that exact audience as only someone who experienced something in fourth grade can do. So that's pretty cool.
Experience
he said that.
and teaching from is a very key point that you taught me early.
Oh, tell me more.
Whenever a presentation on sins that I was involved in, and you said, unless you have your own experience to pour into it, the men that are watching it are going to pick it apart and it be a lie.
Yeah, we don't want to. It's not vulnerable.
Right.
That's right.
If you're not vulnerable, like if I was not me, you wouldn't. You just why put on the facade?
Yep.
It's too hard. To me, putting on a facade is too hard. It's like lying. When you lie, you got to tell another lie, and eventually you forget the first lie you told,
But
and people are going to figure you out. But if you're just true blue,
I want you to know, I was really good at lying when I was young. I mean, that's one of those. You talk about the deadliest sins in the world, and they've been around for a long time, right?
Exactly.
There used to think there was like 9 of these things, and now they've kind of whittled it down to 7. I don't know what happened to the other 2, but so and I love that presentation because there's this book by this Catholic priest named Richard Rohr, and he wrote this book on the Enneagram, and in the opposite of every one of those deadly sins is a virtue, and so it's almost like we have these virtues as humans, and then the enemy comes and gets involved and tries to turn it into the opposite of a virtue, which would be the worst, the deadliest trap there can be. And so, but anyway, we digress.
That's
that's good, bro. That is really good.
That's very similar to when you go look at the fruit of the Spirit, which
well said.
when you read the fruit of the Spirit, it also mentions. I don't remember the exact wording now, but it mentions the opposite of those, the things
then
that
it
are
leads
detrimental.
off with those.
That's right.
And then you go into the fruit of the Spirit.
Exactly.
So walking by the flesh is here, and it lists it, and then walking by the Spirit is here.
And it lists the rewards.
Very offsetting in nature.
Yeah.
So that,
And as a matter of fact, that's something the church is doing right now. And we do a
Tuesday
lot of
nights.
online stuff. So on Tuesdays, they're presenting these videos that are about each specific fruit of the Spirit. And our sister-in-law did one. It was faithfulness.
Right.
And it was kind of amazing because one of the things she taught us was in Hebrews 11. She called it the Hall of Fame of Faith.
Right.
And that's that very same week in our Thursday morning Bible class. It was Hebrews 11,
Hall
and
of
we
Faith.
just talked about each of those examples of faith, and it's amazing. I said yesterday, there are no coincidences. There's just a
Divine
just a
appointment
moment.
after divine
It's
appointment.
just a moment that God is going to use to put His plan into action. And it's like there's no way that us studying about something and then hearing it again and then hearing it, all that repetition. It means something.
So as the two of y'all have walked as brother-in-laws, how much pouring back and forth and encouragement Have y'all
he
walked-
pours into me. I don't think no.
Ain't that how it always feels? You feel
It
like
feels that way. It really does feel that way
does.
sometimes. But I know that that's not true, because I know there's plenty of times where you tell me, that I've done something that you're just like, oh, I love that.
So how many you want? I mean,
Right, yeah.
I mean, so let me tell you one of the things that we have.
Okay.
Again, we have a really wonderful little hunting camp. And
Just keep telling us about it, Clay. We come experience
I
it.
almost invited you. I guess you'll have to come back for round 2.
Yeah, look, or
That's one thing we do.
the location
Is people we have on, we
at the lake,
revisit
too.
to continue the
Yeah.
conversation.
So next time you come, let's go to the Man Shack. And it's a place that your people would have known, although your viewers might not realize it, because if you go back and you look at one of the podcasts from the Duck Call Room, you were just talking about Martin in the Duck Call Room, and they've had me on a couple times in the past month or two, and it's funny because I'm a fan, right? Let's not kid ourselves.
Right.
I'm a huge fan. I love what they do.
Okay, I mean, I'm a fan of Duck Dynasty. I'm a fan of the Call Room. Now, on the flip side of that, and Phil will get upset whenever I say this, but I'm also a fan of Rod Haydell and Eli Haydell, which are Haydell game calls. And so I'm a duck hunter. So I'm a fan of duck hunting.
Whatever brings them in.
And so I've had an opportunity to be with a lot of great duck hunters. And being with those great duck hunters, that's how I met Phil.
Right.
I met Phil on an airplane 25, 30 years ago,
story.
flying out to Las Vegas for a big industry show called SHOT Show. And so I'm sitting next to him and he's talking to me, and what I love about him, the first time he met me on an airplane, what does he do?
He shares the gospel.
I'll give you one guess.
And,
Exactly.
Hey, we're counting time by him.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
And if you listen to Unashamed podcast, you'd be surprised how many times he tells that story about you.
Well, it's
That's you in that
and you know
story
what's
that he
funny?
tells?
He never
On
can
the
remember.
airplane?
Yeah.
He never can remember Clay's name.
and he never remembers my name. That's me.
I didn't know that. Well, that's incredible. I've heard this story.
Oh, 1,000 times. And that Methodist preacher.
That's right. That's right.
There you go.
He had just graduated seminary.
That's this guy. But what I love about him is I've known them and their family for all those time. And so y'all hear us talking about that stuff, but what you never hear about is my other safe haven, okay? And for me, anytime I've gone through the toughest times, whenever I can watch that sunset and I get out in nature, God speaks to me whenever I'm in nature. I can't make the sun rise. I can't make the sun set. I can't make the wind blow. There's so many things that it's just, see all those chills right there?
yeah.
Oh, my.
Whenever I'm there. And so we have a lake house that we share. And there's this other place, and at this lake house, of course, we have all the pit bosses you can imagine, right?
That's right.
And I don't know how to use them.
But I hear Josh does.
He even brings his own
little bit.
pellets. He researches what kind of pellets, the competition pellets, or this or that.
absolutely.
I have seen him take meat, the cheapest meat I'm not, like it would have been not even meat, but the cheapest meat you can find.
Armadillo? You ever done
He could do. It doesn't have enough fat in it. But you name what's the cheapest cut of meat you've done out there?
Oh, I don't. Whatever you had in the freezer. I mean,
I had a cow butchered, right?
That's right. He
And
had
so
a
you
half
just-
a cow.
I had a half a cow, and
we
you
had some of these.
Whatever was
huge
left and nobody else wanted to
sirloin.
eat.
Nobody knew how
That's
to do
what
that.
he got.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you had these huge sirloins, bone-in sirloins. I was like, what are we gonna do with these? And I think Merle was like, man, that's some of the best steak I've ever had. And I was like, that's some of the cheapest steak I've ever cooked.
It was the best. He took the cheapest things and he made it the best. Sounds like what Jesus did, right?
Oh yeah.
You just read my mind. You took words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
He takes the worst that
Of worst.
nobody else
Yeah.
wants anything
Nobody
to do
wants
with.
anything to do with.
and he takes it and gives it his own spiritual seasoning of himself and makes it the best that anybody's ever experienced.
I love the wine. The wine, where his mom says, "Just do it."
Yeah.
And he's like,
I know
"Mom,
you
it's not my
can."
time yet. Just do it." And
We
and
want
then
everybody to
they're
have
like,
a good party.
the wine stewards like panicked, and then they bring out the wine out of the water jugs, and the water jugs that were used for ritual cleansing. So it's like, who's really doing the cleansing here? And he takes the water and he turns it into the best.
And he didn't have to make it the best.
No,
Because everybody
Why would
was
he?
already drunk. They would have never known the difference anyway.
That's right.
But he made it the best.
Absolutely did.
That's incredible.
so that's dry. So does he pour back into my life? I weighed $168 when I married into his family.
I don't think you're anywhere close to that.
I'm
right
not
now.
anywhere close to $168 anymore.
So how is that since you married into his family, correct?
Well, we married into the same
into the
family.
same family.
Oh, so
Yeah.
the
He beat me.
sisters.
Yeah,
I have been part of the family much longer at the time.
at least a decade longer than me.
Yeah, but he's still the
He's just smarter than me. He got there quicker than I did. And look, we are coming from there. We just had lunch together.
Yeah.
That's where I invited you to lunch.
Yeah.
Over to the family.
You should have gone, bro.
Well, I could have invited everybody. When he said, "I don't know what all the guys are doing," I didn't know how many guys that was. But looking
Right.
out
Oh,
in the
no,
room,
but he could have went.
looking
No,
around the
that's
room, the
We
coolest
would have
thing-
definitely had to stop and buy more food for that. That wouldn't have been a problem, man.
That's right.
Yeah. I did
Yeah.
say next time, that we should do, next time y'all are here, we need to do. In fact, I think it was the last time you were here, I said, we're having
Memorial
people out
Day.
at the lake.
That's right.
At Memorial Day. I was like,
Yep.
please come. And you already had plans, but
Well, now that we've got
Yeah.
this on record, I'm definitely going to take you up on, because I have an idea I'd like to talk to you about when we get off of here that God's had on my
It
heart.
has to.
I don't know why you should do it whenever they're off of there. What if?
well,
What if
maybe he doesn't want to share it with the whole
Throw it
world.
out there.
You know?
Here's one of the things I'd love to do.
I'll cut it out if we don't like it.
So,
Oh, okay.
I'm West Virginia born and bred. I shared this with Phil.
I just need to understand, because I don't understand all the different lines. Do they have sweet tea or not?
No, they do
Okay.
not do sweet tea in West
no.
Virginia. And we don't have
That
soda
explains
pop.
a lot.
I want you to know,
there.
I'm back. I know exactly where you're from now.
And we don't do soda pop, we do pop.
Yep. We don't do either.
Nope.
We do Coke.
But we do squirrel gravy, rabbit
Okay.
gravy. With if it moves, we eat it, and
We
make a little gravy on it. You know what I'm saying?
We like the concept of gravy. You're in Louisiana, so we're more of a couvillon. But
Couvillon, okay.
Yep.
So when I was a kid growing up, my mom and dad, sort of like you, Josh, and my testimony is going to be coming out soon. It's going to be a long one. So Todd and I are working on how we're going to do that together. But I was sharing with Paul Stevens part of my testimony of my mom and dad split when I was 7. And my grandfather was a very wealthy man on my mom's side. He owned a coal mine. I mean, their money was no object to this man at this time. And he and I were very close. He went nowhere that I didn't go with him. So when mom and dad split, that all stopped. That went away. My life was devastated. And I was telling Paul about when my mom was leaving the house one day, when she was driving out of the cul-de-sac, I had my hand on her door handle and I was running with her trying to get her to stop. And she wouldn't stop. She sped up and I had to let go. And this was Paul Stevens. He said, John, thank God she did that. Imagine where you might be today if she stopped and you opened that door. So I say all that to say this, because of that, my dad and I ended up, and I had an older sister, she bounced back and forth, but my dad and I ended up going living with his mom and dad, who weren't the money people that they got. When you went there, you got the socks and underwear for Christmas, the things that you needed. They saved my life. So when I was there, my uncle, Donnie, used to take me rabbit hunting. I was his and his brother, Mike's, rabbit dog. There's not a brush pile or a briar thicket in Logan County, West Virginia that I haven't been in. But let me tell you what that did for me. At 7 years old, I was walking through the hills of West Virginia with a 12-gauge shotgun. And my grandmother used to always tell me, John, you don't ever shoot once. Because she was always afraid I had slipped and fell and my gun had went off. So it didn't matter if I killed that squirrel on the first shot, I had to shoot again. As I got older, every time I went squirrel hunting, I always ended up bringing home more rabbits. And my dad used to tell me that I was the only person he knew that could kill more rabbits without a dog than a man could with a dog. So I said all that to say this, Clay. What I would love to do is, my days of shooting...
You can say whatever you want, but you were a lot richer than you realize.
There you go.
Oh, yes.
If you got to shoot 2 bullets, my grandfather only had 1 bullet he could shoot. They gave you a spare.
Right.
I'm just saying, you might not realize the
Shotgun shells are not cheap.
What I would like to do sometime, I think would be awesome, would be to spend a day or two in the duck hole. No gun. I don't want a gun. I don't want to shoot. I want to experience it. But to mic men like you and Martin, or I've got 4 mics. We can mic up whoever you want to mic up. And have a couple of us with cameras. And just now, we may not want to hear all your conversations, but have a conversation like what we're having now about how God's moved in your lives and what the nature means. If we could do it, or if not, just come and spend that time with you guys and see
the camaraderie.
I'm smiling because it's also it's just like this podcast. It's
organic.
Yes,
you go whatever direction.
Martin, you asked a second ago about Martin. Were you really there whenever he got the phone call about his dad passing? Yeah, it happened right there. That did happen, because I had no idea the next year when we went back there. I had no idea they were recording that prayer.
Oh, really?
No clue. And so I'm at that prayer.
Oh, dude, I was a mess.
So I'm at that tree, and I'm praying, and I'm confessing with those guys, hey, y'all know me. Y'all know I've been struggling with anger. And I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud that I've been struggling with anger, but y'all know it. And it's something I can't get out of my life. And so when that prayer aired, and I had no idea that prayer was airing, because I had no idea that prayer was on tape, the easiest way to get over anger is to confess it in front of a world that you didn't know you were confessing to. And so now everybody knows Clay has an anger issue at this moment in time in life.
Yeah, everybody knows.
Wow.
And people start pouring into you because now you've said it.
And the other unique thing that has always been true in my life, and you check it with yourself, is when I confess something to other men, it loses its stronghold.
Absolutely.
It's like
does.
the light shines into it.
That's good, bro.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's taking the courage to get to confess. Now, I was not trying to confess that. Full disclosure.
Right.
I was not trying to confess that to everyone. But anyway.
Again, it's organic.
Oh, that was as
like
organic
just like what we have here. But I just got to tell you, man, that the impact. I'm one of those people that I was an emotional mess because I remember you all talking about that in a prior episode
every year,
and it was just. But so that's what this podcast is about, Clay. Is to not necessarily for a place for people to air out their dirty laundry. That's not what I'm saying. There are other men who are dealing with those anger issues.
Yeah.
Right here. You guys got something in common, man.
Yeah, I had no idea. And what's weird for me is anger was, again, I grew up with that dad that I told you about. Mm-hmm. So anger was so foreign because I'd never seen him just struggle with anger.
Whereas it was the opposite for me.
Yeah.
I love my pops, I love my grandfather, I love my dad, but I saw anger in them all the time.
So you
never,
modeled
never,
it.
never.
Yeah.
I would say never directed at me. I wouldn't call them. Nobody had ever been physically abusive to me or anything like that. But that doesn't change. That anger was there. Maybe yelling. But nothing else.
This morning, my 4-year-old crawled up in bed with me. I hollered at him. I heard his little feet pitter-patter. We've been on the retreat, so I hadn't been hearing those pitter-patters. And so I yelled his name, and he came running in, and he got in bed with me. And he's in this little weird copycat stage, okay? And so he started copying me. And I said, good morning. He said, good morning. I said, how are you? He said, how are you? And so as soon as I see that, he's 4, so he's not old enough to correct what I'm about to do to him.
Right.
I said, God loves me. And he immediately said, God loves me. And so, that's how I use that at 4. But that's because I'm modeling what my dad did,
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have anger to model. So I knew it was not right. But I still, even knowing it wasn't right, still I couldn't break it. It's not like God was out of my life. It's just.
Anger is what had my wife broken in the backyard. And I think that's why when I tell people about the type of breaking God had to do on me, is because it took that kind of a drastic break in order to break the anger that I was carrying. And I realized after being in the baptismal waters again yesterday.
Say that just one more time.
Let's hear that.
Being in the baptism waters again yesterday.
Yesterday.
Just yesterday.
That there's a peace that I have today, that I had the minute I come out of the water. Like I said, I was baptized back in 1990, but there was, real quick, God spoke to me 3 years ago. I didn't know nobody. I had no idea how it was going to happen, but I knew when I was watching The Unashamed, the Ouachita. You're going to the Ouachita. Okay, if that's what you say, that's cool. I'm down with that. But you got to make it happen. There's a story about this podcast, why it's where it's at today. That it took me to say, God, it is yours. It's not mine. I'm done with it. And there was a Larry Bowles, had waited 2 months to get back in touch with me. And I said, if you want me to continue this, you got to show me. And I stopped praying at work, went to my desk, flipped over my phone. John, I am so sorry I have not reached out to you. And I told Larry the story. He kept apologizing. I said, Larry, no. God had to get me to a broken point and turn this over to him. And he used you. Man, be thankful he used you. But I realized there's going to be a point. This is a mountaintop moment for me right now. And I'm going to pull a Rooster Hamby here. I'm looking forward to the valley because I know that's where he's going to grow me and build into me. And I'm prepared. I mean, I'm going to face this world as a new creature in a new light.
And with your hunting background and exposure, if you get on a mountain, at certain altitudes, there's nothing there except rock. There's no vegetation. There's no life. So
now,
you can't survive.
Hold on.
With my hunting background, I'm in the bayou.
That's right. That's right.
I ain't on the mountain.
He's on the Rocky from Mount Everest here.
In Louisiana, the highest elevation in Louisiana?
Yeah.
What is it?
900 something feet.
Is it not?
Yeah.
Somebody
That's a mountain.
Yeah.
You do
That's a
elk
bump.
hunts or deer hunts, like Midwest.
They lied to you.
No,
Really?
Yeah, but that goes back to the lion thing. Don't worry. I could have told you that at one time.
Your brother may have done
No,
something.
my brother
Yeah.
loves it. Oh my goodness, he went up to Montana the other day. I mean, it was like in May, all the seasons are closed. It's breeding season. Apparently in Montana, they still had turkey season open in May. How he reads these obscure passages over what's open where, I don't know. But so, yeah, he did journey. And FYI, full disclosure, I did just come back from the mountains.
Okay.
But I was in the mountains. Another guy who really made a lot of impact on me is Trent Langhofer.
Oh, really?
And so Trent used to be the pastor here at this church, and he's now.
I know Trent. I don't know him, but I know him.
Yeah. So he's teaching at Colorado Christian University.
Okay.
And he's teaching in the counseling program. And so I'm taking some counseling classes up there right now. And so I was in the mountains, so I do know the mountains.
But from a different
But not from the hunting
for the same
aspect.
reason.
Thank you, Lord.
Sorry,
Now,
guys.
if mallards ever start flying in the mountains, if anybody online knows of mallards flying in the mountains, I'm your huckleberry. Call me up.
Let you know about it. Absolutely.
Well, in West Virginia, I mean, on our mountaintops, we do have life. I mean, there's
No
plenty
sweet
of,
tea.
no sweet tea, and we do drink pop, but.
You what?
Pop. Yeah, I know. It's a foreign language
That
to us.
last P needs to be a little more pronunciated.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, that valley, I mean, I'll never forget the day I heard Rooster say, I was built for the valleys. That's what he said. I was built for the valleys. And then when me and Todd said, man, we never thought about that. We love that about you. And he got embarrassed because he felt like he was gloating or he was bragging.
Yeah, not Rooster.
No, but that's just who Rooster is. And we said, no, Rooster, don't feel it that way. And so when I say that, I'll never put myself on the same threshold as Rooster, Amby. Never. No,
That's
man.
a good
There's
thing.
no reason.
No. I want to stay on John's path
There
and
you go.
nobody else's. And that way,
I don't want Rooster's path.
but I'm gonna
I
tell you
can't
what.
fight.
No.
Like Rooster. Rooster goes into some tough spots.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at least now, when he does go in those two tough spots, he's pulling from a different battlefield.
I can remember.
Instead of the old ways of throwing those hands up first, he says, no, let's have a study. Let's have a conversation first. And it de-escalates immediately. I've tried it just because Rooster challenged me to try it that way. And it works every time.
Now, on the other hand, just similar to how I told y'all yesterday, my grandfather would come with the fish first and then pick them up.
Right.
And then
Dust
go to
them
the
off
bottom.
and give them a
That's
message.
right. That's right. There's like I said, there's 1,000 stories like that about him, and they're all true, as far as I'm concerned.
Imagine beating somebody up and then saying you want to go to church.
Yeah. Well, they deserved the whooping for what they did, and then now let me help you get out of it.
And straighten up the rest of your life,
That's
too.
right. That's right.
So we've been in this thing about 35 minutes now. The question I'd like to ask you guys.
Well, I before you do that, I'd like to actually go back to something you said when you came out of that water yesterday, and what you felt, and what was that?
Freedom,
Freedom.
clean,
Yeah.
forgiveness.
So, for the last month and a half, 2 months, when I've been preparing for this testimony that I had to give, something was just eating at me. I told my wife a few weeks ago, my fuse is about this short right now, and I don't know why. I would blow up for no reason. And she knew I never meant it. And so, we're at a place now where, if I'm angry, we can talk it out. But I was getting angry at everything. And so I had this testimony written out, and I knew that it was coming up, and I kept changing it and kept making little edits to it. And then last Sunday, we talked about it, and would you say that I presented it to you, or would you say that I read it to you?
You read it.
Absolutely. And is what you heard yesterday what I read to you Sunday?
Oh, no.
No, not at all. he had some ideas, some edits. He read into some things. He heard some things that I wasn't hearing in it. For instance, one of the things you said was, here's this little boy in 4th grade whose world was shattered. And now where do you teach? 11 years I've been teaching 4th and 5th graders, and I've never even thought about that. Not once. And so...
And it was so obvious.
It's so obvious to him.
It's so obvious hearing it.
Yeah.
And he wasn't seeing it. You know, but I mean, it's like I had the lens. Y'all all wear glasses, right?
Yeah.
I just had the lens to see, and it was so obvious. And whenever I said it to him, it was like, I don't even know if you understand this yet.
No, I don't.
That's your preaching. That's
Right.
what you practiced on that tape when you were a little kid.
Yep.
You practice preaching, but your preaching is not your grandfather's. Your preaching is yours. It's Josh Cook's. And Josh Cook's preaching is teaching a 4th grade class upstairs that I can't teach.
I can't teach it.
Well,
And
and
that
then,
John can't teach.
and so he gives me these notes and gives me these ideas, and he says, I want you to just totally throw away that intro. He said, I don't buy it. And it doesn't matter what it said now, because he was right. I kept reading it going, it's not authentic. And I tried to make some edits to it that Monday, and I got to a point I was so frustrated. I said, I've got to just start over. And that was already document version 2 at that point, mind you. And so I said, new document in version 3. And the words just started flowing. And in the end, not that there wasn't some copy paste, because there were some stories that I thought were perfect.
Cool, yeah.
But I was able to change, that's the wrong phrasing. The story that I was writing changed. And I was able to get out. Anger was not a huge part of the story previously. Whereas I would go so far as to say that was maybe the main point. And when I finished and I hit save, I didn't even send it to him yet. And it was like a knot that had been sitting here for weeks was gone. My fuse was so short that just that Wednesday night before, my son had come home, and he had been telling me for a little while, there's a problem with one of the windows on my truck. The window doesn't want to roll up all the time. And I said, well, quit rolling the windows down. Just that simple. And he comes home Wednesday night and he says, Dad, the window is broken. Like, not the wind glass is broken, but it will not roll up at all now. And I got so angry. I just started hollering at him. I told you, don't roll the windows down. Why did you do that? That's the exact reason why I told you. I'm just on and on. And then, of course, he didn't enjoy that. He was not appreciative of that. But about 30 minutes later, and I think, why did I react that way to him? And I go and I apologize to him. And I said, let's go out here and see what we can do. And in probably 5 minutes, we've got the window up and a piece of wood in there temporarily. And, it wasn't anything he did, nothing he did wrong at all. But I certainly reacted that way. So that was just how short my fuse had gotten. And it was that peace, that release. Mm-hmm. And you experienced it through baptism, but that doesn't go away. That there's always something. We go to these retreats and we talk about going and ringing that surrender bell, and there's always something that something we need to get rid of, something that is eating at us. And I just didn't know at the time that it was, I needed to get that story out about the anger, and I needed to let it go, that I had been letting it eat at me, and it was gone. And I mean, it was, when I presented yesterday, I couldn't even read what I had written. I was sitting there behind the curtain trying to go over it, and I kept looking at it. I don't need this. And I set my tablet down. I'm not saying I never referenced it. And as a matter of fact, every time it came to the Bible verses that I put in, I wanted to make sure that I read it. I had them highlighted even because I wanted to make sure I got it right. But the rest of it, it was referenced.
Right.
Barely. And I don't even know where that came from. I didn't practice that. I didn't even record myself doing it. I timed myself once saying it aloud because Gary wanted to know how long it was.
58 minutes and more.
And it was 58 minutes when I did it. And I told him that Friday morning, he said, or that Thursday morning rather, and he said, you need to cut it down, and that's Saturday's a tight on time frame. But instead,
you did great. You added what, 4 or 5 minutes to it?
Yeah, something like that. But instead, what he did was he gave me more time. And he said, he came to me that morning. He said, I found the time that you need. I don't want you to worry about time. Yeah. He said, say everything you need to say. And that was. It was great. It was perfect. It felt. Let me rephrase that. It felt great. It felt great to be able to express that to this room full of men and my wife and my mom and my aunt. And
you got to warn a brother. I mean, you got to tell me when all these people are coming. We're on a men's retreat, and I see these women start walking through the door, and I'm like, I know all of them. I'm like, what's going on? And then I realize he's about to do his testimony in front of his mom, in front of his wife, and in front of his aunt. Yep. I just stood up and started getting tissues. They were for me. I gave some to the other
I had paper towels back there, brother, because I was
Oh, man.
It was good.
Well, I appreciate that. But it wasn't.
Without this relationship, it wouldn't have been that.
And there's that. But it was also, I was trying to do it my way. I had an idea that I thought, this is my story and I'm going to write it. And it never worked.
No.
And when I finally let go of that my way and was open to, okay, what am I missing here? And it was God's way.
Right.
And those words flew out of me. The Holy Spirit put those words in me. I did not. And then even as I'm talking, even as I'm saying it, there were things that I said that I never wrote down. I didn't come up with that. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way I pointed over at Jared Stokes' dad and spoke directly to him. That was never a thought in my mind. I don't know Mr. Bobby at all. I'd never met him before. But something said, tell him about that.
There's been several times. I've talked to Bill Dye about this, and I had him on the podcast, the pastor of North Monroe. There's been times that I preached, and people come up to me and say, man, when you said this, it really blessed me. And I didn't say that. When I walked away, I'm like, I didn't say that. I don't know where and Bill said that's happened to him on several occasions. So when you speak, if the Holy Spirit is working, that's going to speak to them in their own way. And that's the way about the Bible. It's a living, breathing organism. How many times, Clay and Josh, Todd, have you all picked something up and read a scripture and you're like, man, I never read it like that before. I didn't know that was there. I tell my wife, I said, listen to this. Yeah. I've got as many times as I've read the book of John, I've never read it like this. I didn't know this is what happened.
Every time, maybe?
Every time I read. Every time I read James. It's just this short, little, like 5 chapters.
Hey, hold on. James, right? What our Thursday morning Bible study? What book are we starting this
James.
Y'all, so
Clay?
2015.
Clay?
2015, I was in the worst time of my life, right? Worst shape of my life. And so I go to this Bible study. It's on James. And I do that because my buddy Martin says to me, he goes, listen, when I'm in a tough time, I read James. So I'm starting to read James. Then I go to this Bible study, and it's James. Then I'm downstairs, and Chad Johnson says, hey, we're starting a little Bible study over at Julian's place. If you want to come, we're starting on James. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'll do it. And then I go to that Thursday morning Bible study. Guess what they were studying? James. You can't make it up.
No.
You can't make it up.
He gives you exactly what you need when you need it.
I mean, we just finished Hebrews, and that's what Thursday said, "Lord, we're going to go into James, so maybe you need to show up and tell us about your experience with James on Thursday morning."
I don't want to have
We'd
to
love
relive
it.
James.
There was a meme on Facebook. I'm in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. I'm reading a book that Chad gave me that a rabbi wrote, a Messianic rabbi. The book is entitled Moses Wrote About Me, because I've always wondered, if I didn't have the New Testament, could I preach Jesus like the apostles did? So that's what I want to learn. I want to learn how to preach Jesus from the Old Testament books. Not to live in the Old Testament, but I think that if I learn the Old Testament and Jesus there, it's going to help me understand the New Testament even greater. And
look, I just as a side note, keep going where you're going, okay? But not only do I don't want to live in the Old Testament, and I don't want to live in the New Testament time.
Not at all. I love when
I like air conditioning.
Right, right.
Now, I'll say this: social media and all these other things that impact us. Like I was reading this, or I didn't read it. I listened to a podcast the other day on Huberman, and so he was talking about this podcast was that the human race has never had to communicate with their thumbs, and so how your brain's shooting new wires. Because, not only is the Bible living and breathing, we're still living. The way God made us is to be creative and adaptive. Mm-hmm. And so, but man, I don't know. So I'm with you.
So where I was actually going with that, there was a meme on there about Job. And it was like a cartoon drawing. He was all in all of his sores and it had his undergarment on, that was it. But the caption over this, now listen to this, man, this is good. It said it wasn't that Job knew God, it was that God knew Job.
Amen.
And I'm like, that's had such a traumatic impact on me. Because I had just gotten out of reading the book of Job when I saw that. And I'm just like, it makes perfect sense. Well, we forget that he knows us, man. He knows our anger.
Think back to this morning and to that guy that got up on stage. It was at the retreat this week. And he said, I realized that it wasn't that God had failed me. It was that I had let go of God.
Yeah. It's never that he fails us. It's that
That's right.
we revert to our own understanding.
And we've got these shirts on, this no half measures.
No half
and
measures.
it's how many of us have just done it halfway. Have just done it because we thought that's what we're supposed to do.
That's right.
I'm guilty, and I'm sure everybody here is guilty of that at some point in some way.
Clay, he seems like he goes all in all the time.
I know his flaws too. So
that means I'm really guilty.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking these things, and I can remember back in 15. I can remember sin from today, right? I don't have to go back to 15.
No.
Right.
Yeah,
but
right.
that deepest, darkest, that dark night of the soul is what it's sometimes been referred to. And so I'm coming through it, and I'm reading James and James and James and James. And I can remember duck hunting. You're talking about duck hunting. And the best way I could put duck hunting during that season of my life is I didn't even want to duck hunt. I knew, and I told my mom that, and my mom said, "Clay, you don't let that go. That's part of your love all of my life, right?" And she said, "Sometimes you can't taste the meat, but you still know you need it to sustain you." And so I did duck hunt, and I did duck hunt with my buddies. And Martin said, Phil's teaching a class on baptism at church. And so I started coming here to this church during that time. I was already friends with Martin. I was already friends with the guys, right? But I didn't go to church in this place. And one time, after a few months, the show still had a tremendous amount of popularity. And so every Sunday, Phil was here, and there would just be this large crowd of people around him. You couldn't get to him. And so I walked down and I looked at Jace and I said, hey, Jace, would you mind, just tell your dad I need to talk to him later. He goes, absolutely. And so I left, exit Clay stage right, you know. And so I'm walking up these stairs, because if you go out the side of the church, you can go up the stairs instead of right back. Yeah. So I'm halfway up the stairs, and they're all uneven. And so you already have to be careful. And I'm halfway up these stairs, and I said, now, Clay, that's dumb. You know all your life, if you feel something, you just go and you do it. Don't walk away from God. So I turned around and I went back down those stairs, and I went and I just sat next to Phil on that front row with all these people. And he's known me. He loves me, you know. And so he puts his hand on me, you know, just like this, and he's kind of holding me.
And at that time, he still had massive.
I mean, you should have seen. Yeah. So
he was still big. He was a big.
And so he does this, and I said, "Hey, I don't mean to interrupt." And you know, he's holding me, and I said, "But I think I'd like you to baptize me." And he looked at this person. I don't know if they're from Iowa, Ohio, or somewhere. And he looked at them and he said, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to need to interrupt this conversation." And he looked right back at me and said, "There's no better time than now."
Let's go.
You know, I mean, so that, you know, and so then I remember coming up out of the water, you know, because you have all these lights, just like there's a bunch of lights here. And I remember coming up out of the water, and for me, I couldn't see anything, but I could hear this thunderous applause. I didn't know there was anybody else in the room. Okay? And Jace is there on the dry side of things. And Jace looked at me and said, "Man, you really needed to talk to my dad." You know? And
I shouldn't have waited.
You know? And so anyway, but that, you never know. Like, I had been baptized. But sometimes there's just that need of confession and renewal
and reset.
And Martin had just said it to me, you know, a week or 2 weeks before. You know, Phil's teaching on baptism, on the floodwaters.
You know how dirty the Ouachita is. When they put me down, when they dunked me under the water, Clay.
You came out with leeches.
It was it was like my eye, when I went down, it was like my eye, even though my eyes were closed, like my eyes were open and I could see the water coming over top of me. And it was, but I get it, bro. Listen, it has nothing to do with the water.
And it has nothing to do with Phil.
No, or Burley or Todd.
Thank you.
But
That's
when your
message.
heart is right, when you hit that water, God's promises are what? Yes and amen. So if He promises He's going to fill us, if we're obedient to what He wants us to do, look out. You better hang on tight and make sure you got the right. Talk to old Johnny Godwin about wrapping it up. You're going to get on a bull, because if you're going to ride the bull of Christianity, brother, you're going to get knocked off the bull a few times. But you know what? You got to get back up. You got to dust yourself off, man, and get back on it. And let's keep on going, because there's people out there like you two and Todd that have meant the world to me. Because when I come down here, when I left here, I had nobody in Charlotte. And I knew enough about the enemy's side of things that he was not happy that John Garrett was down here, that I had given my life back to Christ. So when we're at Chioka, it's a safe haven. Man, there's a ton of godly men there, and there is a dome of covering over people there.
100 acres of holy.
So 100%. When you get in your car and close the door and hit the key and the air conditioner's on, and you drive across that last speed bump, off of the hard top, make that right out or left out of Chioka. There he is with that worldly ball bat. He's waiting to just hit you right up beside the head.
I'm not sure it's the last speed bump. I was at lunch today with my nephew, and old Daniel said, he goes, It's that first indentation.
It is.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly.
It's right.
So he didn't even get that far.
Because I don't know if it's the indent, you know.
So he believes. So he's feeling the same way
There
I
you
am.
go.
Yeah.
So whenever I realized that the Corey was streaming in with with Buck Commander, and then Biggs hooked Todd up with Monday mornings over at North Monroe, and then the Tuesday mornings now at WFR. That was my lifeline. 'Cause I had nobody.
Yeah.
And when God, I'm telling you, I prayed, walked and prayed and walked and prayed. Like I said, we built our forever home. And I told God, I said, if you want me to go to Florida, you got to move that woman in there laying down sleeping right now, because I ain't doing it. And so I come home one day, and this has been about 3 or 4 months. She looked at me, she said, I think it's time we sell.
That forever home.
So then I come down here, I go to the retreat. JJ Salas is my prayer partner. I can't come back and team because Hurricane Ian had hit our house. Or no, we were moving. And just after we moved, Hurricane Ian hit our house, but then the spring was when we had our repairs done, so I couldn't leave and come and team then. So I came in the fall of that following year.
Right.
Well, in that meantime, Todd
that's when
came
we met.
So Todd came the retreat after me,
Which was the fall.
and JJ was his
Table
leader. So JJ connected the two of us. Well, Todd was intentional, reached out to me. Hey, let's meet halfway. I thought it was halfway. It was a quarter of the way for me and 3/4 for him. We walked in Dunkin' Donuts, and both of us probably thought, yeah, this will be a cup of coffee and we're out of here. 6 hours later, we left Dunkin' Donuts, and we've texted each other, call each other at least once a week. We text every day, and it's 7 days a week. And it's what I've needed. And I drive down there once a month. I'm finally got some community, even though it's distant, 2 hours.
Look, Todd is community for me. I don't text Todd like on a daily.
Right.
But when my son's graduating from high school this past May, and he says, you know what, Dad, I'm gonna put a camper on the back of my truck, and I'm gonna go to Florida, and I'm gonna live in my truck for a couple months. I'm sitting here reaching out to the guys who I know come on the men's retreats who live in Florida. And Todd, I remember his text, like it was yesterday. He texted me and he goes, hey, just to let you know, I got Tampa covered too, because is it your son?
Nope, John's there.
Oh, that's okay. There you go. So you didn't even know.
I didn't even know it.
I
was covering Clay and didn't
You were
know.
covering my son.
Yeah, covering Clay's son, didn't know.
Yeah. Because bingo. I mean, so there you go. And he did stay in Tampa for a long time. There's a bridge and a real pretty sunset view, apparently.
Skyway Bridge.
All right. And so one night he was there, and he calls me. He goes, Dad, some real crazy people just pulled up next to me. I'm not sure I'll be able to stay here overnight. I said, son, go find a church and just stay in their parking lot.
Right.
But he knew somebody else in Tampa as well. But I almost burned you up that night. So yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
And you had said something about he was going on south from Tampa.
So he was going to go to Miami, and thank you, Lord.
He didn't.
Well, you know what? It's an interesting reason he didn't go to Miami. A kid who graduated the year before him was killed in a tragic car wreck, and so he ended up not being gone for the full 2 months. He said, Dad, I feel like I need to be back there. But let me tell you what, he doesn't even know this. And so if he listens to the podcast, we're in a bind. I have seen such growth in my son from going out and spending time, kind of like a rite of passage. And, you know, baptism is very similar to that. And ironically, he needed to go out and be on his own. But what other people need is the opposite of that, right? In order to go out and be on your own, you need to be prepared for that journey. And then you need to be able to come back.
We want to be respectful for y'all's time. We just hit an hour. If you guys need to go, I had one more question for you. If y'all need to go, let us know. We can come back and do this. When you hear the words discipleship, mentorship, what do y'all think about? How do you see that? What does that mean to you? How have you seen that here at White's Ferry? I talked to Big Dave a little bit on the retreat. I've heard Mac's testimony about how CR came to be here from when he was on Unashamed. But I'm sure CR is a huge part of what you all do here. But personally, from the two of you and what you've seen here, when you hear mentorship or discipleship, what do you think about it? I mean, how do you all view that? How do you see that here and the role that it plays within the church body here?
That's a hard question to answer to me.
So I have a Mac story. I mean, I have a Mac story.
No, go ahead, bro.
But it has nothing to do with your
Okay, well, that's all right.
mentorship
No,
or
you're good.
discipleship, and at the same time, it has everything to do with
Well, then let's hear it.
and discipleship. So what Mac won't tell you, he'll tell you if you ask him, but it's CRI, not CR. Do you know the difference between CRI and CR?
It was the very first one that they came in here with, right?
So CRI is Celebrate Recovery on the Inside. So it's in jails.
Okay.
Yep.
And CR is Celebrate Recovery, so it's in churches. And so they were trying to get CR to go into some of the prisons and jails here. And it was really cool because Mac, sometimes I work in that industry, and Mac was wanting to get into some of the prisons and jails, and so I helped set up a meeting with him and a warden, and he comes into the meeting with the warden and with myself and with another person, and he says he starts explaining who he is, and trying to tell me why we need to celebrate recovery. Or the warden, why we need to celebrate recovery there at that facility, celebrate recovery inside. And he said, now tell me again why I'm here. And I said, because you're a duck hunter. He said, what? And I said, because I've watched you growing up on duck hunting videos. And so when Mac Owen said he wanted to come meet, I was like, I'll meet with Mac Owen. Again, this is long before the show. This is long before a lot of things.
During Duck Man while they were...
Oh, yeah. This is like a long time ago. But so what they ended up doing, setting up that program, CRI, is they brought 12 men in from different facilities in North Louisiana. And then those men went back to their facilities and started CRI in those facilities. And it was an incredible program. It is an incredible program.
So it's still going today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, there has to be mentoring and discipleship within those prisons, or it's going to fizzle out and go away.
Right, and you have to be so careful in prisons and jails because you don't want to have an inmate lord it over another inmate. Right? And so you talk about discipleship, it's not lording it over. It's undergirding and serving.
Yes.
And so that's a Mac Owen story. But it's a unique Mac Owen story. And I'm telling you, they did not have but just a closet they could meet in. And he said, we'll take the closet. I mean, he didn't care the space. He wanted so much to be able to just
There's a reason
serve
why
men.
he's where he is with Celebrate Recovery now.
Yeah.
Because his heart and what he wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just got that heart. What about you?
Well, I mean, I guess I would think of all of the people that I have served with, and there's times where I'm learning from them, and there's times where they've come back and said they learned from me, and it's a partnership. We say discipleship, we say mentoring, but it's a team. I'm kind of losing my words there. It's
Living life together.
yeah, it's
How do you cut a brisket?
against the grain.
How do you know which way the grain goes?
Right, experience. You look at it.
How many times have you tried to teach me how to cut a brisket?
I don't know. Lost count.
Okay.
Are you still teaching? Is what I want to know.
Yeah.
I want you to know. That's what's so unique about Jesus. So Jesus, whenever he was facing his own death, we know it as the Last Supper, right? So what he does is he goes and he shares a meal with his best of friends. And that's, we started off, again, with the chills.
Yeah.
You know, we started off talking about what has Josh done for you? You know, how has he discipled you? And I said, well, I can count 10 different ways. Which one do you want? And you said, well, just name one. And I said, he cooks.
Yeah.
And most of the time you would think, well, that's not discipling. But when you share a meal together, that's where you share life. You're intimate, you're vulnerable, and when you have that kind of level of intimacy, then you can talk about the real things that are happening in your life.
That's right.
Ironically, I don't have to tell him if I have an anger problem.
Right. It's
He
right
sees
there. Yeah.
when he's staying with me for the weekend,
That's
or
right.
I'm staying with him for the weekend.
That's right.
You're going to get to see the anger issues,
Yeah.
Right.
whether I want them to come out or not.
Right. Yeah.
Ice is going to fall on the floor, you know, and then you got to pick up the ice, and then you tell the kid, "Don't roll the back window down."
That's right.
Oh my goodness! And the kid comes in, and the back window won't roll up, and we know the window is stuck.
Your intimacy you're talking about with the Last Supper, one of my favorite sermons that I ever preached was after Christ's resurrection. And he's walking with the disciples on the road and they don't know who he is. He's keeping himself concealed. And he walks with them and he talks with them. Well, they sit down with Christ to share a meal. When were their eyes opened? When he broke the bread. He had spent so much time with them, man. Every time he broke that bread.
Everybody knew.
They knew it.
Yeah.
And as families, you all eat together every Sunday. When I grew up, that was it, man.
Yeah.
The family went to grandma's or went
That's
to
right.
mama's or papa's. And the kids played football or basketball outside. And where I was raised, the men ate. Then and the women served, and then the women sat.
Yep.
And it wasn't a male chauvinist thing. It was back then the women stayed home and the men were working, and that was the custom. That was our heritage. It's not that way now. But it's just there's something like you said, Clay. There's something about sharing a meal together.
You can't hide when you sit down at a table
No.
and eat with somebody.
When we do the men's groups at Todd's once a month, the conversation is one way. But once we eat and then we break open God's Word, the conversation is totally different. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely.
There's something about sharing
A meal.
that meal together. And I think it's very special out there at the retreat.
Yeah.
I saw that today or this week because I was part of Food Table Talks.
Yeah.
And man, there was, and I'm not going to mention their names, but there's a couple of guys sat down beside of me that I think are pillars, guys that I'm like, man. But whenever I started talking to them and they started opening up, and they become vulnerable. And I'm thinking, you know what? Though I look up to these guys as pillars, they still have
A skin disease, a flesh disease.
Flesh disease just like I got. They're human.
Yep.
But how do we build into one another, keep each other strong, walk with Martin to the tree, put your hand on his shoulder when he's remembering that phone call that he got that day. And
One way.
And Josh, when you're thinking about the anger that you had and what you've dealt with as a 4-year-old, and now the 4-year-old How many of them 4-year-olds now have you built into that will never forget you? I've never forgotten my football coaches. The people, no matter how old or young that I've been, the people that have truly had an impact in my life, whether it was a Sunday school teacher or a football coach, I remember who they are. And you two, Todd and I have waited a long time for this. You've been on our list for a long time. And
We put you off because we wanted to do it in person.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
I like
like
face to face.
Oh, yeah.
I
You've
do
been
too.
quiet
It's
though.
more natural to us.
That's, I offset John. John can talk the rocks off that wall.
I want to rewind just a little bit. You talked about how we go. We have lunch. We have lunch every Sunday, and I brought that up in communion just a couple of weeks ago. We go to lunch every Sunday, and right there in the Bible it says Jesus and his apostles were reclined at the table. And when I read that, I couldn't help but think about when we're at that table, do we just finish eating and then get up and leave? No. We sit there. Maybe we push our chair back a little bit and go get dessert and whatever. We recline at the table and we sit there and we discuss, whatever. Maybe our plans for the day or the week, or maybe we talk about what the sermon was about, or who knows what we may discuss. There may be 3 or 4 conversations going on around this table, and I have to think that's been going on in families, in family groups, in gatherings. And when I say families, please understand, not everybody at that table is married into this family or is blood related to this family. We have people that come in. We have our Brads and we have our Aarons and Danas. So they just come in, and
Forever family.
And exactly. They're not related to us, but Brad is my nephew, and it's this community, and we're just around this table, just celebrating, just not even celebrating, just communicating.
About every other week we're celebrating because every other week somebody's got a birthday.
Somebody's got a birthday. That's right.
My goodness.
Can we get an Atkins birthday cake here, boy?
I'm telling you, I've never heard so many birthday songs in my life.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. To me, being born and raised in West Virginia, the small town church, this is the largest church with that feel. It doesn't feel like a church the size that it is.
We run out the people we don't like.
Well, the one thing,
I'm joking.
No, he's not.
It was a
No, he's
joke.
not.
Yes. I've only been here since 2015. I haven't seen them run me off yet.
right.
Well, they haven't
might
run
now.
me off yet.
Now
so-
that I say that, they might.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I know this. In 2020, in October 2020, my wife made the arrangements for me to be baptized at university.
Okay.
So we go back home after my baptism. We figure out, all right, well, now we got to find a home church. We'd already been exposed to live stream, so we stayed in live stream as we were finding a home church. Easter rolls around, and me and her decide, well, we're going to WFR for Easter Sunday. Well, as we walked through the doors, they said, welcome home. Y'all are not local. Where are you from? And I said, we're from Florida. Well, that got out, and it made the ear of Paul Stevens. And as we were going into the main sanctuary for the service, I hear a voice behind us saying, yeah, those are the ones from Florida. And a voice, and it almost makes me tear up every time I hear him now, is because it was Paul. He said, excuse me. And we turned around. He said, y'all are from Florida? I said, yes. He said, it is an honor to have y'all here. And I said, we wouldn't be anywhere else. Y'all have made us feel like home at a distance. Y'all have said, welcome home every Sunday. So we have considered this our home. He said, okay, I'm glad you're here. Day went on. Well, we went to lunch, and I looked up the eldership of the church, and right there is Paul Stevens, an elder of the church who found out a visitor from Florida was here and made it his point to find them and welcome them. That lets you know right there the structuring of this church. And they're going to be authentic. They're going to be intentional. They're going to, if things are wrong, because of the fact they're involved, they're going to know they're wrong. They're going to be able to see, got a anger issue. He's got a lust issue, a self-esteem issue. And they're going to start pouring into that. And it's down to the members, because of what they've seen, they repeat. Because of what I've seen, I've learned to repeat. It's generational. We talk about the generational curses, but in the same fact, you're talking about generational blessings.
That's right.
Because I've got two that are off camera that are generational blessings. Because now the things that they've seen that have been curses in me won't be on them.
We do these retreats and events like this, maybe even revivals and things, and there's a metric, right? There's something that somebody may ask you this right now. Oh, well, how many baptisms were there this weekend?
Right.
Okay. Do y'all remember any? Did you see any happen at the pool or the lake or even in the baptistry today? No. But you said generational.
Yes.
How many fathers and sons did you see reconnecting and healing relationships?
Oh, yeah.
At least 6.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I participated
Or
in that
brothers
one.
Yes.
out there healing relationships.
Yes.
And that there's so that means more sometimes than the introduction of new is the restoration of what was already there.
Well, it says on the sign outside, worship, family, restoration.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about the sign out front. I'd have too much fun talking about church politics.
That's right.
That's funny right there. But for me to wrap, I've heard my dad say this because, again, we do get to work in a prison setting every now and then. And he hasn't spoken at a graduation for CRI or anything in a long time. But anytime I would hear him say it, I would hear, you got to have 3 things, is what he would say. And it's true no matter where you are. You have to have a roof over your head. If you're homeless, if you don't have a safe space, you're going to find yourself in a lot of bad situations.
Okay.
Tempting situations,
Yes.
situations that you can't control. You've got to have a roof over your head. You've got to have a job. You've got to have a way to make money and or purpose. If you don't have that, you're going to find yourself again in places where you're trying to get money that it's not a good way to get money. And you got to have a way to provide. And then the third thing is you've got to have someone to look up to. You've got to have a mentor or somebody who will disciple you. Because you can have a place to lay your head and you can have a way to get money. And if you don't have that person to hold you accountable, you're still going to end up in a bind.
Just as lost can be.
And I love that you took where I was headed right out of my mouth there. And I love that because the discipleship happens all over. The discipleship happens with father and son. The discipleship happens with brothers, with brothers-in-laws, it's all over the place.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's organic.
How do you cut a brisket?
Against
Across
the
the
grain.
grain.
How do you know?
He doesn't know what that is.
Well,
It's organic. He's going to show you.
That's right.
What I'm
Josh,
saying.
I know. It's where the
gotta have
flat ends.
You've got to have somebody to teach you.
It's where the flat ends and you turn it. And
It's
Yep.
that
Todd
simple.
probably tried. We
See,
were
you
talking
just-
to some chefs here.
Oh, no worries.
I'll even bring my own. Hey, listen, I'll bring the meat and I'll bring my own pellets if I need to.
Oh, well, look, there's a need. I mean, Todd's coming back in 2 weeks. We need you too.
I wish if I had the PTO, I would come. But I'm going to tell you what, that trip to Germany, boys, I need to win the lottery to make up for that bad boy.
They drained you there.
So just the reason why I have my pit boss is watching Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing we do, both of us, each of us have a question we ask our guests. Mine is, if you had to isolate to a particular, I know yours, so you get to hold on to a particular verse that has covered your life, that has inspired you. What is the verse?
Without hesitation, it's Joshua 1:9, because the Lord has been with me everywhere that I've gone. Okay, and now it's just, do not be afraid. Do not. There are several translations. Do not despair. Do not be anxious, etc., etc. But the Lord has always been with me.
Yeah.
Even when I haven't been following Him, when I haven't been listening to Him, I can look back, and I writing that story, I could look back and see God kept putting people in my life to disciple me.
Yes.
Putting people in my life to guide me back.
Yeah.
To the way that He wanted me. Yeah. Without a doubt. Without hesitation.
Now, I know mine, but I'm curious what you think mine is.
I'm curious too.
I'm dying to know. Yeah.
I know it's Numbers 6.
Oh, okay. Fair.
I've heard you quote it so many times.
Okay, so
I figured that was.
Yeah, no.
To.
No. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you and give you peace. No, that's a great one. But that's a blessing. And so I say that blessing at the end of live stream because I want everybody
I've heard you say that
to be
many
blessed.
times.
Right.
But no, 1 Corinthians 15:58.
Okay.
And so, and a buddy of mine, that preacher who asked my dad, when did you start loving God? What's your first memory of loving God? He said, when did you start loving your mama? I mean, and then he followed it up with, whenever you received breast milk. I mean, whenever you were born. I mean, when? And I'm sitting here going, oh. But that preacher also preached 2 of my grandparents' funerals.
Awesome.
What happens when you outlive all of your friends, right? There's nobody to come to that funeral anymore.
Oh, wow.
And so we did very intimate funerals, and this preacher was not their preacher, but he was our preacher. And so he did their funerals. And he, for my grandfather, took his Bible, and I had no idea. My life verse whenever I was in high school was 1 Corinthians 15:58. And that happened to be one of the verses that my grandfather in his Bible had underlined and highlighted. And this was my grandfather that I really never knew as I'm not saying he wasn't nice and kind, but I didn't see him reading his Bible every day. So anyway, what ends up happening is the verse says this. You don't have to look it up. I can tell it to you.
Okay.
Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your work in the Lord is not in vain. And so it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're duck hunting. It doesn't matter if you're at work on computers. It doesn't matter if
Working on a ranch.
It doesn't matter if you're making a trip to Germany or moving down to Florida. Whatever you do it for the Lord.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, mine is my question. My verse on that, because I've always lived my whole life in fear, is 2 Timothy 1:7. God's not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, patience, and a sound mind. And that's what I hold on to, because fear doesn't come from Him. There's good fear. I mean, like we fear our fathers. When we grew up, we fearing our fathers. That's the type of fear we need to have with our Heavenly Father.
Respectful.
Yes, it's a respectful fear, a reverence fear.
Yeah.
So mine is this, and I think you answered it already earlier in the podcast, so Clay, you can go last again. If you could view a sunset anywhere on the globe with your wife, where would it be?
At the lake.
It's got a great view.
It does. It really does.
Lake view. Lake.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
It's just a peaceful location, and it's somewhere where it has been just my wife and I, but it has also been him and his wife, and it has been other sisters and brothers. And
are you just standing on the shore of the lake, or are you on the porch of
no,
or
in the living room, in the front.
I'm
There are
going somewhere
windows.
with that question. Talk
There
to
are
me.
windows
Yep.
all around, and this view. This piece of property that my brother has graciously allowed us to use.
Right.
Has this view that you could see the sun rise and the sun set in the same day from the same
Same
chair,
seat.
potentially.
Wow.
And I don't know how many sunsets we've seen from there, and it hasn't necessarily been a lot, but each one of them has
too
been
few.
special. Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking forward to the next one that we get to spend there.
Awesome.
Whether it's just my wife and I, or whether it's with Clay and Rhonda, or Cynthia and Brian, or whoever else may be there.
So tell me the question again. Where?
If you could view a sunset anywhere on the globe with your wife, where would it be?
The place that I told you could do your next podcast if you come back. Yeah, the hunting camp. And there's this one little spot. I'll be there. Look, I want you to know, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would be there tonight, but I've been on a men's retreat, and I need to be with my wife.
Yes, I was getting ready to say. you
And
know,
I asked her this morning, I said, hey, where are we going to be tonight? And she said, I'd really like to be here because we have a friend staying with us, with one of the girls, and so there's just a lot of reasons. And she said, I'd really like to be here tonight. I said, no problem. So what do you want for dinner?
I think Sarah's probably coming back to
Okay.
my daughter. And
There you go. And, but tomorrow night, God willing, I'll be watching the sunset in this spot. I could almost give you the coordinates, but I'm afraid too many people will show up.
Please
I'm not
don't
like
share
Phil.
that, please.
Phil will tell you his address and have to put up a fence because he's like, what did I do? I'm like, Phil, you can't do that.
Or I'll give out his email address on the podcast, and then it fires up. That's how Kenny Moore found him. So Todd, tell them what the top 98% of the answers are. Probably the top 99%.
Everybody wants to see it on their particular back porch.
Yeah, it's either the front porch or the back porch.
The other 1% is like you and I, in the wilderness. Because the ranch where I work at, we have a tower blind, and it looks right into the sunset. There's just something, you said it, there's something about being in the wilderness, in God's creation, where you absolutely cannot mistake His presence.
That's right.
There's nothing like being in West Virginia. 3/4 of the leaves off the trees, hard frost. And that sun starts coming up over the mountain. And you can see it coming up, getting to you. And as it's coming up, the steam is lifting from the frost off of all the leaves. And there's just the smell, the sight, the sounds as you hear nature wake. There's just something about it.
Is that like fall or winter or spring? What season is that?
That's right around
The transition
October.
from fall to
October.
winter.
Yeah.
October.
They have real seasons up there.
See, our seasons are alligator,
That's right.
deer, duck, crawfish.
Well, ours
and 3 of
is
the 4
circles
are
back.
just hot. So
Well, I get all of those in one day at my house. The deer, the alligators, I get the water moccasin. It was a baby. I sent a picture of Todd. He said, "Oh yeah, that's water moccasin. It's getting ready to go in my garage." So yeah, even though we're in Florida in the community, you got them all. Deer, we've got, I don't know how many bucks we got running around. We have taken up so much of your all's time, man. Thank you so much.
Thank
And we
you
will
both.
take you up on that offer. Now, Chad, it may not be as fancy a setup as we got now, but because Chad's getting ready to head to L.A. He's going to Houston to work on a film, by the way. And but I can't express my gratitude enough, and I think it's only appropriate since we're at WFR and this place means so much to Todd and I. And both of you guys are live stream, and what's the last thing you say to people?
Numbers. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and give you peace.
And welcome home.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
That part. I was doing the other.
Yeah, you were doing.